Hi everyone, it's Kelly here. Welcome to my channel if this is your first time. Welcome back if you've been before. Lovely to have you either way. On this channel we talk books, and today I am recording yet another. I feel like every second video at this point is a book haul. And that is because I had a few weeks off in July. And I got behind and so anyway, I need to do these hauls so that I can put these books away. So here we are yet again with a book haul, so apologies if this content is getting a little bit samey. Anyway, let's get on with it. I have a much smaller book haul for the month of July, which is what we're recording today, than I would ordinarily have. If you have been here for a while, you will have seen me recording some quite big book hauls with lots and lots of secondhand books because I love to bookshop secondhand. But in the month of July I didn't do that as much, so I only have a few secondhand books to show you today, and just a couple of books from that I've bought brand new as well, from a variety of places, some of which were just on because they were on sale, and others of which were books that were just jumped out at me at bookshops. So anyway, let's get started. Let's start with the new books, and the first one that I picked up is this one, Days at the Morisaki Bookshop, by Satoshi Yagisawa, translated by Eric Ozawa. This is one that I have heard lots of people raving about, but really I don't know much about it, so let's find out about it together. It says, from the beginning of summer to early spring, I lived at the Morisaki Bookshop. I spent that period of my life in the spare room on the second floor of the store, trying to bury myself in books. The cramped room barely got any light, and everything felt damp. It smelt constantly of musty old books. But I will always remember the days I spent there, because that's where my real life began. And I know, without a doubt, that if not for those days, the rest of my life would have been bland, monotonous, and lonely. The Morisaki Bookshop is precious to me. It's a place I know I'll never forget. What an awesome little blurb on the back. I don't even know that that's a blurb. It kind of sounds like it's a quote from the book. Yeah, there is another blurb here, but I won't read it to you. I think that that quote kind of said it all. So yeah, Days at the Morisaki Bookshop. I'm looking forward to reading that one. This is an interesting one that I found in my local bookshop, and it's a poetry collection called Coastal Poetry, From Yarra Bay to Watson's Bay, by Libby Hathorn and Elizabeth Cummings. Now, I know Libby Hathorn because she writes children's books, and I read them as a kid, but also she's still a current author, so she's still writing books for kids. And this is these two places are in Sydney, so Yarra Bay and Watson's Bay, and basically what this book is a poetry collection that tracks along the coast. So essentially, yes, it says on the back, come on a coastal journey with two enthusiastic local poets as they explore our beaches, boardwalks, and unique environments. So what it is it goes along the coast, and it goes at the beaches along the coast in Sydney, and there's several poems that go with each sort of little area, which I think is really cool. So it has the Yarra Bay and La Perouse Headland, Little Bay, Malabar Beach, Maroubra Beach, Coastal Baths, Coogee Beach, Gordons Bay, Clovelly Beach, Waverley Cemetery, Cliff Boardwalk, Bronte Beach, Tamarama Beach, Mackenzie's Beach, Bondi Beach, North Bondi, Watson's Bay. So it's sort of, and they're, I'm just looking on the contents page, and underneath each of those subheadings are the headings for the poems that go with that area, which I just thought was such a cool idea. So yeah, I'm looking forward to reading this one, but my thought was it would be really cool to actually do like a big day trip and go to all of those places and read the poems that go with each place and then go to the next place. So I don't know if that's doable in one day. It probably is, but it would be a commitment. So we'll see. We'll see if that's something that I can do. But I'm really looking forward to reading this collection of poems, which is very like local to where I live, which I think is really cool. So that's that one, Coastal Poetry by Libby Hathorn and Elizabeth Cummings. The next one I got, I picked up because it was on sale, and as if you have been watching this channel for a little bit, you will know I have just started reading Heartstopper by Alice Oseman, and have been really, really enjoying it. So far I've read the first two, and they were both five-star reads for me. I shouldn't say now because this is it was an August purchase, but I have now completed my set in terms of buying them. Stay tuned for that in August. But in July, I picked this one up, which is called Nick and Charlie, a Heartstopper novella by Alice Oseman. So essentially this is not a graphic novel like the Heartstopper books are. It's just a normal text novel. But it is part of the universe of... So Nick and Charlie are the two main characters in the Heartstopper series. So it's a little novella about their relationship, which I have been enjoying so much. So yeah, I don't know where this sits in the Heartstopper times. Yeah, I'm not sure. It may have come after the first four, because I think number 5 in the Heartstopper series came more recently, so I'm thinking maybe this one existed before that, so it might have been the first 4 of the Heartstopper books, and then this one. I'm not sure. So anyway, I will look that up, and I will read it in due course, I'm sure, as I'm reading through the Heartstopper series. The next one, again, was on special, but it's one that I've had my eye on for some time, and that is Crying in Mart by Michelle Zauner. If you have been anywhere on Booktube and the online book community, you will have heard lots of people raving about this one as well. So I've heard lots of really good things. It's a memoir, and it is about a woman whose mother, I believe, dies of cancer. So this is when... Yeah, anyway, let me read the blurb rather than just trying to vaguely remember what what this is about. So it says, when Michelle Zauner was in her mid-20s working as a waitress and struggling to launch her music career in Philadelphia, she got a call that her mother was ill. She put her life on hold and flew home to Eugene, Oregon, to be with her mother through the final excruciating months of her battle with cancer. This is Zauner's searingly candid coming-of-age story of growing apart from and then back together with her Korean identity and of forging her own path in the wake of a devastating loss. With humour and heart, she tells of growing up Asian American, straining to meet her mother's expectations, moving across the country, and returning home to reckon with grief. She recalls treasured childhood holidays spent in her grandmother's tiny apartment in Seoul. I never know how to say that. Is it Seoul? Seoul? I'm not sure. Anyway, I'm so sorry. I'm sure I've pronounced that incorrectly. And now, in adulthood, learning to cook the Korean dishes that revive and nourish those memories. She savours the unexpected solace of weekly trips to her favourite Asian grocery store. Vivacious and plain-spoken, lyrical and honest, Zauner's voice is as radiantly alive on the page as it is on stage. Crying in Mart is an exquisite debut, a book to cherish, share and reread. The thing that I've heard about this book is, and perhaps I'm misremembering this, but I've heard that there's a lot of really, there's good food writing in here as well, like in terms of like connecting emotions to food and so on, and like because of the cooking element of it, and like trying to cook, you know, home foods, like foods that remind you of your childhood and things that your mother made and so on. So yeah, I'm looking forward to reading this one at some point, and hopefully it will be soon because it sounds really amazing. All right, now technically that is the end of the new books. However, I've been given a book that is basically new. It is technically secondhand, so I think this will be a nice little segue into the secondhand portion of this video, and that is The Ministry of Time by Kaliane Bradley. This is currently, everybody is talking about this book on Booktube and so on. It's everywhere at the moment. So my husband's auntie was her in real life book club. Mind you, she's in her 80s, my husband's auntie. She was reading this with her book club and it didn't make sense to her. She couldn't follow along. So she said, would I like to have it, because she knows that I'm a reader, so I said, sure, that would be great, thank you very much. So now I own a copy of The Ministry of Time. But let me tell you about this one in case you haven't heard about it. It says, in the near future, a disaffected civil servant is offered a lucrative job in a mysterious new government ministry. Her role is to work as a bridge, living with, assisting and monitoring the expat known as 1847, Commander Graham Gore. As far as history is concerned, Commander Gore died on Sir John Franklin's doomed expedition to the Arctic, so he's a little disoriented to find himself alive and surrounded by outlandish concepts such as washing machine, Spotify, and the collapse of the British Empire. During a long, sultry summer, he and his bridge move from awkwardness to genuine friendship to something more. But as the true shape of the project that brought them together begins to emerge, Gore and the bridge are forced to confront their past choices and imagined futures. Can love triumph over the structures and histories that have shaped them? And how do you defy history when history is living in your house? So it does sound really good, and an interesting concept. So I'm looking forward to getting to this one at some point. Alright, so now proper into the second-hand portion of the video. So the first two books are books that I actually was not 100% sure I didn't already own a copy of, and I'm actually still not sure. I have to have a proper look. But let's get started on these. So this is Quicksand and Passing by Nella Larsen. So Passing is the one that I've heard of these two, I believe they're novellas, which is about two childhood friends who are young, light-skinned black women. They're called Claire and Irene, and they meet again years later, but one of the women is married to a white man, and she lives passing as a white woman, whereas the other woman identifies as black and passes only when she needs to. So it's sort of like looking at that element of of race and of being a black person, and what that's like, and the decisions that you make, and so on. So this should be a really interesting novella to read, and I am looking forward to getting to it. And it's set in the 1920s. But I don't know much about Quicksand, so this is the other one that's in here, so I'm going to read this little blurb that they have for Quicksand. So it says, in Quicksand, Helga Crane is the lovely and refined mixed-race daughter of a Danish mother and a West Indian father. Uncomfortable in the company of her white relatives, but somehow always apart from the black communities she encounters, she finds herself trapped in a complicated web of middle-class respectability, religious belief, racial identity, and sexual desire. So that also sounds like a really interesting book. So I'm looking forward to reading these at some point. But yeah, definitely, I think I may already have a copy. So if I do, I will redonate this one or the other one, depending on which one's a nicer copy. This one is by an author who I read many, many years ago, and it's been a very long time since I have read any of her books. But at a certain point in my life, they were really mind-blowing books to me, and the author is Karen Armstrong. So she writes about religion, and she writes about sort of the intersection of world religions, and particularly the monotheistic faiths, and that at a certain time in my life, that was a really it was a revelation to me to read her books on those topics. This is one of her memoirs, The Spiral Staircase, and I can't recall if this is the first one or the second one. So she's written two memoirs. So essentially, Karen Armstrong was a nun, and then she ended up leaving that life and sort of going back to sort of a normal, regular life. So I'll read the blurb on the back of this one. After 7 years of hoping but ultimately failing to find enlightenment, Karen Armstrong left her early life as a nun. She knew almost nothing of the changed world she was entering, and was tormented by panic attacks and inexplicable seizures, existing somewhere between the mildly eccentric and the tragically certifiable. Her attempts to reach happiness seemed doomed to fail repeatedly. Temporary respite of a sort was discovered in encounters with some remarkable friends and colleagues, and with the extraordinary few who, like herself, seemed somehow separated from the world. Finally diagnosed with epilepsy and given proper treatment, she began the writing career that would become her true calling. Written with startling perception and astonishing sensitivity, The Spiral Staircase is an exploration of one woman's painful journey to find herself and claim her place in the world. So I wasn't 100% sure I don't already own this, because I do own quite a lot of Karen Armstrong books, but I picked it up because it was only a few dollars when I was secondhand shopping. So I also can't remember if this is the one I've read. I'm sure I've read at least one of her memoirs, but I don't know if it was this one or the other one. So, anyway, that's the book that I picked up, The Spiral Staircase by Karen Armstrong. She's a really interesting person. And she also, doesn't really, although she gives her, I guess she is giving her opinion in a way, she never, you never know, if she, about her personal faith and where she sits on that spectrum, and she never condemns anyone else's faith. So she just, the way that she writes about religion is very respectful. My memory of it anyway. It's, as I say, it's been 20 years since I've read her books. Maybe not quite that. Maybe more 15. But yeah, it definitely, the impression that I got at the time was her just spitting facts, basically, and giving factual information about the sort of trajectory of different religions. And I think her memoirs are what comes closest to her expressing her personal beliefs. But she, again, never really quite, she just talks about what happened to her. Rather than sort of specifically saying, and this is where I sit now, in a religious sense. So, yeah, I have really enjoyed her writing in the past, and I know that will be a good read if it's not the one I have already read. I mean, even if it is, it will still be a good read. Okay, let's move on. The next book is one I have actually read, and I was just excited to find myself a copy of it secondhand, and that is We Come With This Place by Debra Dank. This is a book that was shortlisted. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was shortlisted for the Stella Prize, and I'm pretty sure it was last year, so in 2023. And this is a non-fiction book. So the Stella Prize is really interesting in that it has fiction and non-fiction books. For those who don't know, the Stella Prize is an Australian prize for women, so it's similar to the Women's Prize, except that it sometimes has poetry, it sometimes has non-fiction, fiction, it can have graphic novels. There was a contemporary of this one that was a graphic novel. So a very interesting prize, and very varied in what it sort of brings to the fore. So this is a book, so Debra Dank is an Aboriginal Australian author, and she is writing very much about place, and I very much enjoyed reading this book. It was very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a book that affected me as I was reading it. I connected with what she was saying and her explanation of her connection with country and with place. So it says, there is a deep pain in these pages, and anger and injustice, but also great love in marriage and in family, and for the good Dangi landscape. Dank faces head-on the ingrained racism that lies always under the skin of Australia, the racism that makes it possible to beat and rape and disenfranchise. Overwhelmingly, this is a book about resilience and strength of a family, and of beloved parents and grandparents guiding and teaching their children and grandchildren about relationship with country through joyful gatherings and the pleasure of spiritual and physical nourishment given by the ancestors. Dank calibrates human emotions with honesty and insight, and there is plenty of dry, down-to-earth humour. You can feel, smell, and see the dust under her moving feet, the burning heat, the brightness of a nighttime campfire, the emerald flash of budgerigars, the journeying wind, the harshness of station life, the welcome scent of fresh water. We come with this place as a profound tribute to her family and to the Gudanji country to which Debra Dank belongs. But it is much more than that. Here is Australia as it has been for countless generations, people and place always in balance, and Australia as it became, but also Australia as it could and should be. That's a great summary of this book. Like, it really, and I think this is one of the things that I really like about non-fiction writing, that is writing about topics that can be quite difficult, is when there is hope. I think where I struggle with reading non-fiction about these difficult topics is where it's just down, 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 and talking about how awful everything is. This does that, but it also is hopeful about the future, and it also is just deeply personal and just a really interesting book. Anyway, I will link up in the cards to the video where I reviewed this book, so you can see my full review. But yeah, this was a really good one, and I'm glad I now have it in my collection. Okay, only 3 more to go. The next one is The Memory Artist by Katherine Brabon. This author wrote Body Friend that I read recently, and again I'll link up in the cards to where I reviewed Body Friend, which was nominated, I think, for this year's Stella Prize. And I really enjoyed that book. So this is a backlist title for this author, who was new to me when I read Body Friend. That was the first of her books that I have read. So I picked this one up, not really knowing anything about the plot, but knowing that I like her writing. So it says, how can hope exist when the past is so easily forgotten? Pasha Ivanov is a child of the Freeze, born in Moscow during Brezhnev's repressive rule over the Soviet Union. As a small child, Pasha sat at the kitchen table night after night as his parents and their friends gathered to preserve the memory of terrifying Stalinist violence and to expose the continued harassment of dissidents. When Gorbachev promises glasnost, openness, Pasha, an eager 24-year-old, longs to create art and to carry on the work of those who came before him. He writes, falls in love, yet that hope too fragments, and by 1999 Pasha lives a solitary life in St. Petersburg, until a phone call in the middle of the night acts as a summons both to Moscow and to memory. Through recollections and observation, Pasha walks through the landscape of history, from concrete tower suburbs to a summer house during Russia's white night summers, to haunting former prison camps in the Arctic North. Pasha's search for meaning leads him to assemble a fractured story of Russia's traumatic past. So that sounds really interesting, and I'm excited to get to this one at some point. The next one was definitely a book that was a serendipity. I've never heard of this. I was drawn to the spine because it looked really beautiful. I looked at what it was about and I was like, yes, I will buy this. And which is one of the things that I really love about secondhand book shopping, is that you sometimes just find something that you're like, I'm so glad that I was here today and this book was here and I found it, because I never would have heard of it otherwise. And that book is The Walled Garden by Sarah Hardy. So I had not heard about this, but if you can, I don't know if you can see that. This was the spine that was in the bookshelf as I was searching, and I pulled it out and I'm like, this is a very beautiful looking book. So definitely that was what drew me in to pick it up, to like pull it off the shelf. But then I read what it was about, so let's do that together now. So it says, she could save the walled garden, or perhaps it would save her. It is 1946. Alice Rain is married to Stephen, heir to crumbling Oakbourne Hall. Once a sweet, gentle man, he has returned from the war a bitter and angry stranger, tormented by secrets Alice can only guess at. Lonely and increasingly afraid of the man her husband has become, Alice must try to pick up the pieces of her marriage and save Oakbourne Hall from total collapse. She begins with the walled garden, and as it starts to bear fruit, she finds herself drawn into a new forbidden love. Set in the Suffolk countryside as it moves from winter to spring, The Walled Garden is a captivating love story and a timeless, moving exploration of trauma and the miracle of human resilience. So it just sounded really good, and I'm glad that I came across it. So hopefully that'll be a good one to get into. I also think it's quite a recent release. Let's check. 2023, so it only came out last year, which so I'm always excited when I find something that's like almost new. And speaking of which, this last book that I have for you today is a book that was published this year, so it's brand new, still in the shops, new, and that is Black Duck by Bruce Pascoe with Lynn Harwood. So I have read Dark Emu by Bruce Pascoe, who is an Aboriginal Australian author, and this one is subtitled A Year at Yumbara. And this, as I said, is a book that has only just come out, and I found a secondhand copy. I couldn't believe it when I did, and I snapped that book up so quickly. It's a funny thing, like when you're in a secondhand shop, I'm saying when I am in a secondhand shop and I find something really exciting, I grab it really quickly, as though not doing so will it make it not be in my hands. It's weird. I don't know why, but I'm like, so exciting. Anyway, let me tell you about this book. Sometimes you need to repeat something 100 times before a bell rings in the colony. From the best-selling author Bruce Pascoe comes a deeply personal story about the consequences and responsibility of disrupting Australia's history. When Dark Emu was adopted by Australia like a new anthem, Bruce found himself at the centre of a national debate that often focused on the wrong part of the story. So I'll just pause my reading there to explain that a little bit. So Dark Emu is a book that is about sort of reclaiming the Aboriginal there was a narrative when the British first came to Australia that that the Aboriginal people were nomadic, and therefore they didn't really have deep connection to this land, and therefore it was fine to come in and take over the land, because clearly the Aboriginal people are just moving from place to place. It doesn't really matter. And so Bruce Pascoe's book, Dark Emu, was talking about how that is actually incorrect, and here is the evidence of that. So he talked about evidence that we have, and sort of looking at things from different perspectives and so on. And what came out of that was a lot of people who read it were like, yes, hard agree, excellent, this is amazing, I'm so glad I've read this book. But a lot of other people who read the book didn't like it, didn't like what it was saying, disputed what he his reading of the evidence, and so on, but also focused on his Aboriginality, because much like in the book Passing that we were just talking about, Bruce Pascoe is a light-skinned Aboriginal person, and his connection to his groups, his Aboriginal clans, I'm sure that's not the right word that we use now, but I can't think of what the right word is. But the groups that he belongs to, they were questioning, so people were questioning that. So that's what they're referring to when they say that the debate often focused on the wrong part of the story. Well, that's what I assume that he means there. But through all the noise, I'll go back to reading this now. But through all the noise came Black Duck Foods, a blueprint for traditional food growing and land management processes based on very old practices. Bruce Pascoe and Lynn Harwood invite us to imagine a different future for Australia, one where we can honour our relationship with nature and improve agriculture and forestry, where we can develop a uniquely Australian cuisine that will reduce carbon emissions, preserve scarce water resources, and rebuild our soil. Bruce and Lynn show us that you don't just work country, you look, listen and care. It's not black duck magic. It's the result of simply treating Australia like herself. From the aftermath of devastating bushfires and the impact of an elder's death, to rebuilding a marriage and counting the personal cost of starting a movement, Black Duck is a remarkable glimpse into a year of finding strength in country at Yumbara. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to reading this one very, very soon, I'm sure. But yeah, very excited. I was so excited to find this secondhand. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know down in the comments if you've read any of the books that I have showed you today, or if you've heard me talking about a book that you hadn't heard of and you're now excited to look into yourself. I'd love to hear that down in the comments. Also, if you haven't already subscribed and you would like to, please do hit the subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching. And yeah, I'm looking forward to chatting with you down in the comments. Bye!